Ok, hola a ustedes, aquí estamos otra vez en el capítulo número 6 de Panorama, sección 6.3. And I'm so excited because we're going to talk about the preterite, which is one of the past tenses in Spanish. When I first agreed to teach this class, I didn't understand the scope, and so I was pleasantly surprised when I looked back a couple weeks ago, looked ahead, and saw that we would be covering the preterite tense. Preterite tense is one of the past tenses in Spanish. We have two in Spanish, we're only going to look at one. But in English, we just kind of say things in the past tense. We add ed to the end of a verb. For example, I watched TV. Then we have irregular verbs, just like we do in Spanish. We don't say I goed, we say I went. We don't say he eated, we say he ate. We don't say I beed, I was or I were. So those are irregular verbs in English, just like we have in Spanish. So we'll get to those. But know that this particular form of the past tense, the preterite, refers to actions that were completed in the past. So not even necessarily a one-time thing, but something that was done and was over. It's not ongoing. Last night, I went to the store. Yesterday, I ate 14 tacos. Today, the Bengals won their football game. Those are all past tense sentences, and they refer to an event, an action that has taken place and is completed in the past. That may not mean a whole lot to you right now. That may seem very obvious, but as you look at some of the other forms of the past tense in Spanish, that will become more important because that's what distinguishes this preterite tense. The actions were completed in the past. So let's look at how to conjugate them. We have our AR, ER, and IR verbs. You take the same stem. You take off that AR, ER, or IR ending. You're left with the same stem we looked at for the other verbs. And then you add your ending. The endings for ER verbs are E, which is an E with an accent, aste, O, which is O with an accent, amos, astes, and aron. So repeat after me the conjugation of the verb comprar in the preterite tense. Clases repitan. Yo compré. Tú compraste. Usted, él, ella compró. Nosotros, nosotras compramos. Vosotros, vosotras comprasteis. Ustedes, ellos, ellas compraron. You'll notice a couple things right away, and that is that the nosotros form is the same. The preterite tense is the same for the AR verbs as it is in the present tense. So how do we know if we're saying I buy or I bought? We look at context of the sentence, and we'll come to that in a couple of slides. So let's look at the ER verbs. Those endings are E, which is I with an accent, iste, yo, imos, isteis, and hieron. So clases repitan. Yo vendí. Tú vendiste. Usted, él, ella vendió. Nosotros, nosotras vendimos. Vosotras, vosotros, vosotras vendisteis. Ustedes, ellos, ellas vendieron. Okay, notice on that one, the nosotros form is not the same. In the present tense, it's vendemos. For the nosotros form for ER verbs, it's EMOS. In the preterite tense, it's IMOS, imos. Okay, let's look at the verb escribir, a typical IR verb. Take out the IR, you have escrib as the root, and we're going to add our ending. So clases repitan. Yo escribí. Tú escribiste. Usted, él, ella escribió. Nosotros, nosotras escribimos. Vosotros, vosotras escribisteis. Ustedes, ellos, ellas escribieron. Okay, did you notice it? The nosotros form for the IR verbs is the same. Escribimos is the present tense of escribir, nosotros, and it's also the preterite tense. So again, we'll talk about context. So, aste, o, amos, astes, aron. For AR verbs, iste, yo, imos, isteis, and dieron for ER and IR verbs. And there you go. ER and IR are the same in the preterite tense. Some things to look at, very important, are those accents. Just super important. The words are wrong if you don't get the accent in the right place, and you've given me the wrong answer. And you said it incorrectly, which is overall what we're doing, right? We're not We're not learning for tests, you're learning how to communicate. So it's you need the accents where they belong. Okay, let's look at a couple things. The yo, the usted, el, and ella form all have written accents on the last syllable because that's the way it's pronounced. Okay, so that's what we're just talking about. The accents are important. The er and ir verbs are identical in the preterite tense. Okay, for both of them, we talked about that. And the nosotros, nosotras forms, ar and ir verbs are identical to their same present tense forms. And context is what's going to bring it up. So some of those context words are the ones you've talked about so far. En invierno compramos ropa. So in winter, we buy clothing. If you say el invierno pasado compramos ropa, now you made it past tense. So last winter, we bought clothing. And so that context of saying pasado, which means past, is going to tell you if the sentence is present or past tense. Anoche, which means last night, compramos unos zapatos. So again, those helping words label it, give the context for when something took place. AR and ER verbs that have a stem change in the present tense are regular in the preterite tense. They don't have any stem changing. So we specifically say AR and ER verbs there because, as you can guess, IR verbs do. IR verbs that have a stem change in the present tense also have a stem change in the preterite tense. There's also another spelling, and this is purely so that the word is written the same way it's pronounced. Words that end in CAR, GAR, and ZAR have a spelling change in the first person singular in the preterite tense, okay? So think about that for a second. Think through the pronunciation rules and think of why that would be. Buscar, right? If you want to say past tense, you're going to say busqué. But how would you spell busqué to make it be pronounced the way it is? If you just put B-U-S-C and then have an E with an accent mark, that's going to be pronounced bouché because C before an E has its soft sound. The only way to get a C with a hard sound is to add that silent U in front of it, just like in the word K, right? So in that tense, the C gets dropped and the C becomes the QE. In llegar, to arrive, lleg is the root. If we add an E to the end, E with an accent, E, it would be pronounced llegué because G before an E has a soft sound. So in order to keep it from doing that, we're going to add that silent U after the G. So it's still pronounced llegué, which is what you would think it would be, but to make it do that, we're going to spell it differently. So the pronunciation is very, very normal. It's very regular, but we have to make some spelling changes to make that happen. And the last one is empezar. And the reason this happens is because you probably heard in some countries, in some parts of Spain, they speak with the theta. So in order to make that be written the same way it's pronounced, that Z changes to a C and the first person plural, or first person singular. So those are all spelling differences to make the words be pronounced the same way. And there aren't a whole lot of these. Words that end in CAR, GAR, ZAR. These are the most common ones, and obviously there will be others, but you'll just remember that. And you'll just look at it when you're writing it. I think that just doesn't look right, and then you'll make it spelled according to the way it's pronounced. Okay, present tense of regular verbs. We talked about this in a couple lessons ago when we did the present participle, that some of these, when you have a vowel and then the ending is also beginning in a vowel, and then the next letter is also going to be a vowel, that I will change to a Y. We read it with leer, which is when we talk about present participles, it becomes leyendo with the Y, because otherwise you'd have E-I-E-N-D-O. It's the same concept here. In fact, leer is one of those same verbs. So the I of the verb endings of creer, leer, and oír change to a Y in the third person. So instead of being leo, L-E-I-O, it becomes a Y. Creer becomes creyó. And then we add accents onto the yo, tú, nosotros, and vosotros forms. And that's again because of pronunciation rules, because of the few number of syllables that are in those words. So, okay, so that's the rule. The I in creer, leer, and oír has an accent in the yo, tú, nosotros, vosotros, and vosotros forms, where it doesn't always in the other ones, in the two form, for example, and in the nosotros and vosotros forms. And then the I will change to a Y in that third person singular and plural. Sorry, I probably made that more confusing than it really is. Read that slide a couple times and you'll figure it out. It'll make sense to you. Okay, let's ver, the word that means to see, is regular in the preterite tense, but it has no accent marks. Again, because it's a three-letter word, it's too short to require any accents. So V, which means I see, is pronounced the same way, whether it had an accent on it or not. So vi, viste, vio, vimos, visteis, vieron, it's still pronounced the exact same way, but accents are not required for spelling in those conjugations of that verb, ver. So these are some of the words I referred to a couple of slides ago that will help you express time in the preterite, that will help you to get that context of whether a verb is in the present or the past tense. So let's look at these. Clases repitan. Anoche. Anoche means last night. So if you want to say tonight, it would be esta noche, this night. And last night would be anoche. Anteayer. Ayer means yesterday. That's the next word. They probably should have put that one first, but anyway, ayer means yesterday, and ante means before. So the day before yesterday is anteayer. So it literally means before yesterday. So anoche, last night, ayer, yesterday, anteayer, all written as one word, the day before yesterday. De repente is a prepositional phrase that means of suddenly, of a sudden is what it means. And it's if you're talking about something like you're relating things. So Mark and I were in the restaurant when suddenly Taylor Swift walked in. So de repente, suddenly, and that's going to indicate that the preterite is coming up next, because that's a thing now that happened suddenly. It happened one time and it's over and done with. Desde antes mean from, and then until. So those are words that can also signal the use of the preterite. Pasado, we just said that. That's past. So you can have el año pasado, la semana pasada, el mes pasado, el domingo pasado, last Sunday. And those are going to go after the noun. Those are adjectives are going to go after the noun, and it will agree with both number and with gender. So semana pasada. You could say en las 3 semanas pasadas, in the 3 last weeks. In that case, you have all of them agreeing, again, in number and in gender. So el año pasado, last year, la semana pasada, last week. Una vez would be once or one time. Vez, V-E-Z, is a word for time, but only in like occurrence. So not time related to a clock at all, not even close, but like an instance. Una vez, once, one time, one instance, one occurrence. And then dos veces. Since vez ends in Z, it's made plural with the Z changing to C and then adding es. So una vez for singular, dos veces, tres veces, cuatro veces, etc. And those are words that can be used with the preterite. Una vez yo hablé con el papá de mi novia. So one time I talked to my girlfriend's father. And that's how that would signal that something happened in the past. You wouldn't say one time I do talk to him. Like you wouldn't use that in the present tense. If you're saying one time, you're talking about a time in the past in which something occurred. Dos veces yo aprendí nuevas palabras en la clase. And then ya, Y-A, is a word that means already. So ya hablé con el profesor. I already spoke to the professor. Those are, again, words that can help to indicate the use of the preterite tense as opposed to the present tense, and most helpful with nosotros form, in which those are the similar conjugations. So some examples. Ayer, llegué a Santiago de Cuba. Yesterday I arrived in Santiago de Cuba. Notice llegar a, not llegar en. So we don't say ayer llegué en Santiago y llegué a. I arrived to there. It's just different use than it is in English. And then anoche oí un ruido extraño. I heard a strange noise. So again, those two time marking words signaling the use of the preterite. Acabar. Acabar is something, it's kind of a formal fancy word, but it's a helpful word. Acabar de plus an infinitive, right? So when you have two verbs together, we typically only conjugate the first one, the second one stays in the infinitive, especially after a preposition. But acabar comes with de, and it means I had just completed the next verb. So acabo de comprar una falda. I had just bought a skirt. Acabas de ir de compras. You had just gone shopping, or you just went shopping. So those are also those regular verbs and help with words in the past. Okay, let's look at some exercises. Number your papers from 1 through 9 and go through and complete each sentence. It gives you 3 options there. So choose the correct word and then conjugate it in the past. Now, obviously, at this point, I expect you to go back and refer to your notes. I don't expect you to have memorized the endings yet. So just take a couple minutes and figure out which verb, first of all, and then second of all, look at how to conjugate it in the preterite tense. Okay, and then unpause when you're ready. Okay, número 1. El viernes a las 4 de la tarde, la profesora Mora blank a una reunión de profesores. I'll tell you there are a couple contexts there that will help you, because the fact that it has the word a in it will signal that it's going to be asistir. Since la profesora Mora is third person singular, is ella form, right? So profesora Mora asistió a una reunión de profesores. So in the past tense. Número 2, a la 1, yo blank a la tienda con mis amigos. So something happened in the store with your friends at 1 o'clock, and it's going to be llegar. So the yo form of llegar is llegué. That's one that we talked about. That in order to make it pronounced, in order to make it written like it's pronounced, then that mandatory silent U is added there. So llegué. Número 3. Mis amigos y yo blank 2 o 3 cosas. Comprar, regatear o gastar. Compramos, we bought 2 or 3 things. Número 4. Yo blank unos pantalones negros y Mateo blank una camisa azul. So yo compré, the yo form, unos pantalones y mi amigo Mateo, third person singular, compró una camisa azul. Número 5. Después nosotros, cerca de un mercado, comimos. This don't make sense, sir. Cerca de un mercado. A las 3, Pepe habló con tu novia por teléfono. El sábado por la mañana mi mamá escribió una carta. If she drank a letter or she lived a letter, that would be interesting to see. But she wrote a letter. Escribió una carta. Número 8, el domingo, mi tía decidió comprar un traje. She decided to buy me a suit. And there, again, another great example of that second verb staying in the infinitive form, comprar me, with that indirect object being added to the end of the infinitive. All these rules coming together. I love it. Número 9, a las 4 de la tarde, mi tía encontró el traje y después nosotros vimos una película. Okay, just the only way that makes sense with the understanding of the meaning of those infinitives and how to conjugate them appropriately in the preterite tense. All right, so now I'm going to do a similar exercise that you see on the quizzes all the time. You're going to take the verb and you're going to put it in the one-word preterite tense, which means don't get all fancy on me and give me some other past tense, because the instructions are to conjugate this verb in the preterite tense, the one word. Okay, so let's go through that. Mi compañero llegó tarde a la clase ayer. Número 2, nosotros salir el grupo amigos anoche. So again, as long as it makes sense, you can add whatever helping words you want in there. There may be other ways to do this, but the subject and the verb need to be correct. Así que nosotros salimos con el grupo de amigos anoche would be one way. Número 3, yo ver película ayer. Yo vi una película ayer, yo vi la película ayer, yo vi esa película ayer, yo vi esta, so that doesn't matter, but the ver in the yo form is vi. Número 4, tú comprar algo en el mercado anteayer. Comprar in the to form, compraste. Tú compraste algo ayer en el mercado o anteayer, en el mercado anteayer. So the to form of comprar in the preterite tense is compraste. Okay, last slide. This one you're going to listen to a series of sentences. So number your papers from 1 through 8. You're going to hear a sentence in the present tense. And all you're going to change is just the verb into the preterite, the one-word past tense. So it'll give you the modelo and tell you what it's talking about. You may need to pause the video after each one to give yourself some time to hear the sentence and then write it out with a change in the preterite tense.
2. Cambiar. Change each sentence from the present to the preterite. Repeat the correct answer after the speaker. Modelo.
Compro unas sandalias baratas.
Compré unas sandalias baratas.
1. Enrique lee el periódico.
Enrique lee el periódico.
Enrique leyó el periódico.
2. Llego a las 6.
Llegué a las 6.
3. De repente empieza a llover.
De repente empezó a llover.
4. ¿Escribes a tu mamá?
¿Escribiste a tu mamá?
5. Aprendo a esquiar.
Aprendí a esquiar.
6. Mis sobrinos montan a caballo.
Mis sobrinos montaron a caballo.
7. No lo entendemos.
No lo entendimos.
8. María lo ve, pero no lo cree.
María lo vio, pero no lo creyó.
She saw it, but she didn't believe it. Okay, so again, just some super helpful ways. Now you've expanded your ability to talk about things in the past by learning one simple preterite tense. Again, we call it simple because it's one word preterite tense. Let me know what questions you have. I would think this would be a good time to make some new flashcards with the different endings, the AR and the ER/IR endings for the preterite tense. You understand the concepts. You're just going to have to learn how to conjugate these verbs with some of the exceptions that are there, some of the irregular ones. As always, let me know how I can help. Tuesdays on Zoom, 3 o'clock Idaho time. The link is in the very first week of the on Moodle. So let me know, email me. I'm happy to do whatever I can do to help you guys. Hope it's going great. Talk to you soon. Bye.